Welcome to Bloomberg Law. I'm Pacchia. Earlier this year, 4 Democratic New York State senators split with their party to form the Independent Democratic Conference. Joining me now to talk about the legislative goals of the group is one of its members, New York State Senator Jeff Klein. Welcome.
Pleasure.
So let's start off by touching on a story that's been in the news flow for almost 2 years now. We've been all over it. The fiscal challenges facing state governments around the country. It has evolved over time. The story has been that there are tough choices facing regulators and governments all across the nation. What does the picture look like for New York State today?
Well, I think this year, we accomplished a lot, and I think we really set New York on the road to recovery. As everyone probably knows, we faced this year a $10 billion budget deficit, which was eliminated without raising taxes and without raising fees. As a matter of fact, we even did away with a tax, the so-called high earner tax, which taxed people who made over $300,000 a year. So I think overall what we did was reduce spending. We hear a lot about doing more with less, cutting back. I think we finally did it, and I think we did it in a very, very smart way. No one likes to cut Medicaid. Hospitals rely on it. No one likes to cut education. But what was different about this year, especially on the Medicaid piece, was putting together the Medicaid redesign team. What we finally did was we put the stakeholders in the same room and had them come up with over $2.8 billion in cuts. And it worked. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to see not any less efficient hospitals, but hospitals that are running much better, much more efficiently. And I think this year, we also turned around and solved our deficit woes to some degree for next year. Next year, we were looking at a $13 billion budget deficit. Now all the numbers point to what we did as far as the 2 years' worth of savings, maybe $1.5–2 billion for next year. So if we have an increase in Wall Street monies, which we're expecting, and an upturn in tax revenue, which everyone is talking about, we could start the next fiscal year with a balanced budget.
Is there a sense among your colleagues that the worst has passed? I mean, before we used to talk about New York State facing fiscal challenges on the government level, somewhat to the tune that New Jersey, Illinois, California are experiencing. Now I'm getting the sense that it might not be as bad.
Well, I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I think we have a lot more to go as far as job creation, retaining jobs, making New York much more business friendly. That's something that the Independent Democratic Conference is going to be working on over the summer. We're planning some listening tours around the state because, quite frankly, I get tired of having small business people tell me about all the regulations that New York puts in their way of earning a profit. So these are the things we finally want to get a handle on, and I'm sure Governor Cuomo is going to want to do the same. I also believe that we can still, I think, cut back a little bit as far as having government run a lot more efficiently. I chair a task force on government efficiency, and we identified over a 3-year period over $1 billion in savings by reducing out-of-control overtime, by taking a good hard look of some of the outsourcing that's done by state agencies, and really making government a lot more efficient.
So tell me about the Independent Democratic Conference. You helped set this group up. What is it and how did it come to exist?
Well, it started very unofficially, but I think it's had a tremendous impact. It was a very interesting experiment.
Right.
And
what was the issue with Democratic leadership?
It was really Democrats who were fed up with the leadership of the Democratic Conference. First of all, if you look at the last election, both nationally as well as in New York State, the voters are angry, and they have every right to be. And I think any politician, any elected official that's worth their salt has to listen to their constituency. And I think the most important thing we needed to do in this legislative session was win back the voters' trust. And I think the Independent Democratic Conference helped to do that. I'm a Democrat, always will be a Democrat. And in election time, I want to elect Democrats.
Right.
But when the dust settles and the election is over, it's incumbent upon me to govern in a bipartisan fashion. And
is
that's
that the
what
ultimate
people
goal
want.
of the group? Is it to
Absolutely,
increase the
it's to
standing of the
govern.
Democratic
And
Party
I
in the
think
legislature?
yes,
Yeah.
and I think bipartisan government works, and I think we've proved that.
Do you see yourselves pairing up with a Republican group in the future?
Well, again, all are welcome, and I think we'll be judged by our success. And I think the IDC in the months and years ahead, will actually increase our size because I think most people go into government for the right reasons.
People are saying that the IDC was instrumental in getting the same-sex marriage bill passed recently. Particularly was the report that your group wrote on the economic benefits that same-sex marriage would confer on the state. Tell me about this report. How did this come together?
The Independent Democratic Conference, one of our major priorities was making sure we passed marriage equality in New York State, and we approached it. All four of us were in favor of it. And I think, we can go ahead and make a very important issue as far as fairness, that a loving couple deserves to have the opportunity to marry. Mm-hmm. We can make a legal argument that marriage is a fundamental right protected by the Constitution. We decided also to make an economic argument,
right,
and which resonates with everyone. And our report showed that close to $400 million would be generated over the next 3 years when we legalize gay marriage in New York State.
Right. How did you come up with those numbers? 400 million is a lot of money. What specifically would go into making that number?
Well, the first step was a calculation, on a very conservative calculation on how many gay New Yorkers would get married, and that number is about 25 to 30,000. Then we looked at a number of how many individuals who are close to New York, states that don't recognize same-sex marriage, would come to New York to get married. Altogether, it's about 80,000. People will get married, gay New Yorkers, gay Americans, over the next 3 years. Then you look at the wedding costs, catering halls, flowers and florists, limousines, hotel stay. So just as far as the marriage alone, the wedding alone, it's going to be about $200 million. Then we talk about the taxes. New York City and a lot of other localities have a hotel occupancy tax, which will generate a lot of money. There's money for marriage licenses.
Right.
Here in New York, we charge about $25. In other places, we charge anywhere from $35 to $40. So that's revenue for the state. And one unfortunate, where we pegged at about $80 million where the state would gain, is through social services. Now, when you're an individual and you're living together but you're not married, the threshold to vie into a lot of social service programs like Medicaid, SSI, welfare are much lower. A married couple is now going to increase the income level, and unfortunately, people are going to lose benefits. So we projected that at about $80 million in savings. So altogether, almost $400 million over the next 3 years.
You've also been active working on legislation to help ameliorate the foreclosure crisis that's affecting so many New Yorkers. Is there anything unique about homeowners in New York that makes this issue a little bit more particular? Well,
we were luckier than some of the other states. And the reason being is that although our real estate market did go down, it didn't go down as much as some places like Florida or Arizona or Ohio. So, our numbers didn't go down, but still a very, very large problem, especially in communities of color that have a disproportionate impact as far as having their homes foreclosed upon. Originally, we saw a lot of foreclosures based on these elaborate subprime products, with these, mortgages that readjust to very high interest rates. That is still a problem, but what we're seeing now is just people losing their jobs, unexpected emergencies. So the legislation that I passed really expanded the number of people who would benefit as far as settlement conferences are concerned. Right now, I think banks are too quick to foreclose, not giving people an opportunity to pay something, to work out a payment scale to keep people in their homes. So I think my legislation has accomplished that, and I think we've seen a lot fewer foreclosures around New York State in the last couple of years.
What else would you like to see done?
Well, I think one of the issues that I'm working on now and making sure the law is enforced, another piece of legislation that I had signed into law, requires lending institutions to maintain foreclosed properties. As I said, banks are very quick to foreclose, but now when they foreclose and the property is theirs, they need to maintain it. Otherwise, we're going to interfere with our real estate markets, interfere with communities. A study that was done nationally shows that for every foreclosed property on a block, surrounding property values go down anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 per foreclosed home. So we need to make sure that the banks, now maintain those properties, as any homeowner is required to do under New York State law. The next issue is standing. We're seeing a lot of banks bringing foreclosure actions when I don't believe they have standing. A lot of these mortgage buyouts were very complicated. Who's the servicing lender? Who actually holds the mortgage now? Who has
Right,
title?
there's that major Silverberg decision in New York that says basically MERS can't confer standing.
Exactly. There's also a case out of state where Deutsche Bank was foreclosing on a lot of these properties when they weren't the servicing lender and just a trustee. So I think my legislation, which is rather simple, it requires that when you bring a foreclosure action, you have to have a title attached to the foreclosure, and give the individual the opportunity to raise the standing argument throughout the foreclosure process.
So you guys are out of session for the time being. When you return to Albany in the future, what's going to be on your radar?
I think job creation, and I think making New York a lot more business friendly. One of the things we're going to take a good hard look at is all of these business regulations, which really hurt small business. You got to remember something. I think the problem with our economy nationally, as well as in New York, is we're still putting a tremendous burden on small business. Small business is the lifeblood of our economy. And I think if we can alleviate some of those burdens and have small businesses thrive, that's how we're going to create jobs. That's how we're going to get our economy back on track.
All right. New York State Senator Jeff Klein, I want to thank you for stopping by today.
It was a pleasure.
If you'd like to learn more about the issues we just discussed, go check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.